There we are. Hello, weekly weirdos. We should be live now.
This is so weird because
Anybody
you
see
didn't say,
this?
I'm your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me
I
as
am your host,
always.
Marcus.
My brother Mike.
Yes. Let's check to make sure. Alex, do you see anything? Are we live?
No.
Oh, we are live on mine.
On your YouTube?
Mm-hmm. Yep. You just heard my
Yeah.
playback there?
I'm just not on there.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome to our 2023 MLB live stream. I am Marcus Mead. That is Michael Mead. He looks very much like me. The one who does not look very much like me is Alex Duvall of Royals Farm Report. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a first timer for us, so things won't be the smoothest on planet Earth, but we're going to give you all the analysis we can of picks 8, 44, and 66 tonight. We'll try and keep up with the different picks that happened before pick 8. Alex knows a ton about the draft. Mike and I know, I'll say, a medium amount about the draft. And so we'll try and lean on a lot of the expertise he has and throw a few of our own ideas here for what we want to talk about. But I do want to get started real quick with just your guys' thoughts on how this class shapes up as a whole. I feel like we talk a lot about individual players, and we've talked a lot about players who will be available for the Royals and all those sorts of things, but less gets said about the class as a whole. So, Alex, what are your thoughts about this class as a whole? Oh, never mind. Alex ran away. We're already having issues with just keeping guests here. Mike, do you have any thoughts about this class as a whole?
I'm not going anywhere. You're gonna have to kick me off of this thing.
I love this stream already.
Alex, take it away.
On the draft as a whole, it's hitter heavy, and it's like it's tailor made for what the Royals need in their system. Right? They need college hitters. They need some upside. They need some floor. They need some safety. They need a lot of bats, and this draft has a ton of them. And I was just reading on Twitter that Keith Law's most recent update for the Royals is that maybe they're interested in Tommy Troy with the 8th overall pick at an underslot deal, which would be fantastic. I have Tommy Troy. Oh my gosh, why don't I have my own cheat sheet pulled up? I have Tommy Troy like 10th on my board. If the Royals could get my 10th favorite prospect at 8th overall for a significant underhaul, dude, I'm in. I'm all for it. I'd rather have Matt Shaw, but it's fine. I digress. I would settle for a similar player from a similar profile with maybe more upside than Matt Shaw. I know a very good friend of mine has hinted at the fact that Troy has better bat speed, better overall raw athleticism, might be able to play a better second base, third base with a similar floor. He likes Troy a lot better than Shaw. So I'm all for it. And that's the kind of moves they need to be geared toward. Excuse me, not Blake Mitchell, not Noble Meyer, not a college pitcher. Stay away from the arm, stay away from prep catchers. Go get Tommy Troy under slot, Matt Shaw, whatever you got to do. Get one of these hitters because that's where the depth is.
Yeah, I find it that makes a ton of sense to me. Another thing I think about that isn't talked about, I mean, it was talked about a lot early in this draft process, but isn't talked about as much anymore because people get enamored by individual players. This is a super deep draft class. They'll be able to get talented players at 44 and 66, guys you would maybe think, oh, in years past, these guys might have gone, the well might have been dry of guys you might think would be impact bats at 44 and 66. It won't be dry this year. It won't be dry of guys who are physical prep pitchers who they might be able to get at 44 and 66. The talent pool for this year is one of the deepest you've ever seen, including right at the top where you have 3 guys who would have been number 1 overall picks in any other class, right? Like, and there are years when Max Clark and Walker Jenkins might have been the number 1 overall pick when the years that the draft has been really down. And so the fact is, tonight is an excellent opportunity for the Royals, if they can play this draft correctly, to end up with 3 players who have the potential to be impact major league players for them moving forward.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We were actually just talking about this before. This might be the deepest I've ever seen the high school hitting class be the prep bats, especially when you're looking for something like some power potential, because there's a lot of guys that have it. I'm not as big on Tommy Troy as I am Matt Shaw, but if you get him under slot, I do think there's more position versatility with Tommy Troy. I don't think he's a shortstop either, but I think he's got a better chance to play a solid third base. I think he's got a better chance to move to an outfield corner if you need him to. But yeah, I really think Tommy Troy, if you can get him under slot, would be great. And I think, and it's not just the high school bats either. There's some high school arms, and you and I talked about it in our last episode, that are pretty good there at 44 and 66. We did it with Caderna, and we've seen some positive returns this year on that. I could get behind an exciting high school arm at 44 or 66.
I think you bringing up Tommy Troy brings up sort of the central question of this draft for the Royals at 8, and that is, what's the money like, right? If it's always going to be a question for the Royals about what's the money like at that 8th overall pick. And what I find particularly interesting is the Tommy Troy pick could be a good pick, but it all depends on the money, right? If they save $1 million to $1.5 million on Tommy Troy, yeah, that's a great pick, right? Like, we can handle that. If they end up spending, full slot on Tommy Troy, I don't know if I love that at 8, right? And so, a lot of this is going to be all about who gets picked. Oh, we're already getting to the first pick of the 2023 MLB draft.
They haven't announced it,
I've
but
just heard Paul
Skeens.
Skeens. Yeah, Jonathan Mayo came out and just said it's going to be Paul Skeens.
All right.
Wow.
A pitcher first overall.
Undercutting your own teammate.
In this economy. Ouch.
That is interesting.
Although I've heard some things about Skeens, like he may not care about his teammates so much, but we'll see.
So Paul Skeens, pitcher out of LSU. I know, Alex, he's a generational talent in some ways, probably the best starting pitching prospect out of college since Steven Strasburg. What are your thoughts about the Pittsburgh taking Paul Skeens at number 1? This had to be to some degree about money, because all the stuff coming out was that Dylan Cruz just wanted too much money.
Hashtag draft more hitters, baby. I mean, I don't understand how you could watch what happened to Asa, and I get it. Asa Lacy wasn't this, but even Steven.
Watch what happened to Mark Appel.
That's mine right there,
all
man.
the time. I don't understand how you could watch hitter after hitter after hitter succeed and pitcher after pitcher after pitcher fail. And it's not that happens all the time, right? Pitchers have success, but man, you had 2 generational type of hitting prospects at the top of this draft. And you go with the pitcher. I mean, I get it. He's good, but
he's very good. And
damn good.
We'll talk about Paul Skeens just a little bit. Tall, right-handed, very powerful, very good athlete. Was a hitter up until this year as well, and was pretty good at that as well. A guy who has electric stuff, high 90s fastball, just everything you look for in a pitching prospect, he basically is. But like we've said, like, you can say the exact same thing about a lot of guys who went in the top part of this draft. Now, I will also say, if you look at this week's All-Star game, a lot of the pitchers in this, the starting pitchers that you'll see play in it, were guys taken at the top of the first round. Garrett Cole was a guy taken at the top of the first round. There are many other guys who, the best of the best of the best, tend to be taken at the top of the first round.
Justin Verlander was taken up there.
But we also know that to be a winning team, you need more than one great pitcher. You need a whole staff of good pitchers. And a lot of those guys are going to be found 3rd through 20th round. And so Skeens is off the board to Pittsburgh here at 1. I wonder, it'll be interesting to see the contract that comes out. Like, was he willing to just take slot value, or did he take a little bit under slot value so that they could save some money? I'm guessing because they got Skeens and Langford and Cruz to essentially negotiate against each other, that they drove the price down as much as they possibly could so that they could save some money for later picks.
Which, by the way, if Dylan Cruz and Wyatt Langford didn't know each other and you're bidding against each other, then okay. Like, I mean, in some capacity, you're trying to make some money, go first, get the right team, get the right fit. Like, there's some things that, like, I understand about it. But if you're Skeens and Cruz, like, collude, get together. We're not signing for less than 9.8.
It's not illegal. You can do it.
You can do it. We're not signing for less than 9.8. We're the labor. We're the workforce. We're not signing. We're not going to undercut each other. Like, get in a room and unionize.
Yeah. We are just weekly weirdos. The Royals Weekly, a staunch advocate of organized labor. Anyway, what we heard that Washington was big on Skeens. They had, of course, probably that last generational pitching talent in Steven Strasburg. So we'll see here what they do here. You got to ask yourself, are they willing to pay Cruz's $10 million asking figure? I doubt it. And so it may not be a surprise to see Langford go 2 here and then Cruz go 3. We'll see on that. I guess the question of the draft at this point is who's willing to pay that Dylan Cruz figure?
I sent this to somebody, the same person who tipped me off that the Royals were big on Caden Wallace last year. I sent this to him this year. I said, hey, the Twins have a massive bonus pool. What if they floated the idea to Dylan Cruz and said, ask for $10 million because we'll give it to you?
Oh,
so devious. So
Dude,
devious.
If he fall now, I've also heard, because what this guy basically said is Detroit's the floor. Detroit will not pass on Cruz for any reason. And like, okay, probably yes. But dude, if he's serious about 10
it'd
million,
be a coup.
you know how much money he could get in NIL money if he went back to LSU this year? Not that would be a smart decision, but do you know how much money he could make in name, image, likeness? Like, if anybody's got the leverage to do it, it's the Golden Spikes winner from Louisiana State University. I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see what happens to Dylan Cruz.
Well, let's turn our focus a little bit to guys who might actually be there for the Royals, because Cruz isn't making all the way down to 8. We'll tell you that. So who are some guys that you all both like who might actually be there at 8 for the Royals? We know Alex has mentioned Kyle Teal. For those of our audience members who haven't been following Royals Farm Report at Royals Farm and haven't been following Mike's Twitter account at, I don't even know what it is.
Some Devil
Mike,
04. I got like 60
okay.
followers.
Tell us some players that you guys like at 8.
Go ahead, Alex.
So obviously Teal, the catcher out of Virginia. I love Matt Shaw. I think he's just going to tear up professional baseball, and it crushes me that like he's the type of hitter that the Royals wouldn't consider, because if you go back to last year, I think there's a lot of similarities in terms of value between him and Jace Young, and it's like those are the types of hitters the Royals should be targeting this early in the draft. And to hear that maybe they don't have any interest in that profile, it stings a little bit. But Tommy Troy could be there. Prep hitters, Colin Houck, Arjun Namala. Like, you're talking about all kinds of talent that could be there at number 8. And watch the Royals take Rhett Lauder. I swear to God, if they take Rhett Lauder, I will hang up. I'm not coming back on the show later. I'm going to bed.
Here's my thing, though. At this point, are you thinking, Alex, then it's Teal at full slot or no one at full slot?
Yeah.
Okay. That's where I'm at that place too. I don't want Teal even at full slot. And so all I'm thinking at this point is I hope they underslot someone, because in my mind, the talents that are going to be left, the guys who aren't those top 5, for those of you who don't know, the top 5 guys in this draft are Dylan Cruz, Paul Skeens, who just went, Wyatt Langford, Walker Jenkins, and Max Clark. So beyond Dylan those 5 guys, Dylan Cruz is now going to Washington. Okay.
So for the first time in draft history, teammates go 1-2.
Wow. LSU, man. There's a reason they were in the College World Series here. And so, yeah, they're going to recruit on that for days and days and days as well, by the way. Like they need it. Like they need something else to recruit on at LSU besides the mountain of NIL money they can offer players and the huge exposure in the SEC play. By the way, we also put guys out 1-2.
By the way, the guys that choose to not come here are all drafted in the first round.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm on the let's make it an underslot deal at this point, because that layer behind those top 5 is so long. It only makes sense to me to be like, okay, we're not going to pay you full slot, Kyle Teal. Let's get Matt Shaw for $500,000 less. Let's get EBJ or Enrique Bradfield Jr. for $1 million less. Let's get Colin Houck for $500,000 less. Something like that. And some of those guys I actually like better as prospects than Kyle Teal. Mike?
The Alex tried to scare us this morning on his Spaces thing, where they really started talking about, it hadn't even crossed my mind, the distance between 8 and 44 and the number of teams that pick multiple times and all that stuff. And I'm like, Yeah, that I get it. Now, the counter to that is, like we said earlier, the prep class is extremely deep, especially in hitters. And so, yeah, I'm similar. I'm a Matt Shaw guy as well. I love Matt Shaw. I would be fine with Tommy Troy. I think he's a good player as well. I'm not as high on Namala. I'm not as high on Kyle Teal either. But no, if we took a Matt Shaw or Tommy Troy, I'd be fine with that. I would want them a little bit under slot, but it's weird to be in that eight spot because you feel like the college bats, there's only a couple left that really deserve to go in that spot. And I think we just named the three. I wouldn't be angry with Kyle Teal because of the defensive value. But I think at 8, you got to get somebody who has a chance to be an offensive all-star. And I don't know that Kyle Teal is that, but those two other guys I feel like can be. Oh, and quit this Braden Taylor talk. Okay.
Oh yeah, that's
quit the Braden Taylor talk, guys. Well, I don't dislike him as a player, but he's the kind of guy I hope falls to 44, or I hope I expect to go in the 20s, not at 8. And I know they're thinking under slot, but even that you can get somebody else better. I'd take Chase Davis under slot or even Morales under slot before I did that.
Here's my thing about like Braden Taylor. So the Royals have been mocked virtually every player under the sun who could exist at 8, right? Like every single one. Does this indicate to you guys that nobody actually knows what the Royals are going to be doing tonight?
1,000%.
Okay.
I think some people.
This reminds me of the Frank Mazzucato draft. Like nobody had Frank Mazzucato anywhere near the top 10, and then
no, I didn't even know who he was.
In my basement throwing a fit.
Well, here's the thing. The Royals are just notoriously tight-lipped. They're notoriously hard to pin down. They do things that are out of left field in the draft. A lot of times that can have a downside to it, right? They missed the very obvious thing they should have done. But it also means that we really don't have a great handle on where they're going to go. I think we can boil it down to it's either Kyle Teal at full slot or it's one of a handful of guys for under slot. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing the same thing that Pittsburgh did and they're having these guys negotiate against each other so that they can drive the price down on someone like a EBJ, on someone like a Braden Taylor, on someone like a, please Lord, no, Noble Meyer, on somebody, somebody like that. They're trying to drive the price down on these different guys and say, we think these 5 guys are roughly the same. We'll take the cheapest one.
Yeah, and by that you mean the value of these 5 guys. You don't necessarily mean these are the same 5 profiles. And that's another thing that kind of gets me always. I always look at traits in the top 10. What trait is hardest to get for the Royals? I've always thought it's been power. And so I'll always give just the slight edge to anybody who can provide a little bit of power. And that's why I like Matt Shaw so much. I think his power profile plays a little bit better than Tommy Troy, even though Troy provides what I think is a little bit more defensive versatility. And yes, I do think his athletic profile is a little bit better, although his speed may not be quite as good on the base path. So that I completely agree. I think it's likely they're doing that and hoping that. I just hope the guy that wins the bid isn't Braden Taylor. Let's talk dream scenarios. Let's talk who you do want to win those bids. Alex, everything works out from here on out exactly as you hope. Who are the Royals taking at 8 and for what reason?
If it's like doesn't have to be realistic.
No,
it's a dream, man.
It's a dream. It doesn't have to be realistic.
Look, Tigers are announcing their pick. Hang on, let's.
Okay. Well, we know who this is going to be, though.
If it isn't, I want him. He's my dream.
Clark.
You're shitting me. Okay.
Wow. Oh my. Right. Okay. Well, it doesn't matter because Wyatt Langford's never making it down to 8. So
that's true. He would be my dream. And actually, I think when we did like a dream thing on the podcast, I picked Wyatt Langford. It is the Major League Baseball draft and a lot of weird shit happens. And you and I were I put this out there on Twitter earlier. We need 2 teams to do something wild, to do something way out of left field. And if that happens, then one of those guys that you think of as like top 5 guys falls to you at 8. That would be fantastic. If it's Wyatt Langford, I would shit a brick.
If it's Walker Jenkins, I'd be stoked because to me, Walker Jenkins
is the better of the 2.
Is Wyatt Langford 3 years ago, right?
Like, I got him ahead of Clark by like that much, though. I love Clark. Maybe that much
Jenkins is isn't quite the runner that Langford is. I don't know, but in terms of like profiles, I think Jenkins is Langford 3 years ago.
So here's why I said we should wait, because I was going to say the scenario where teams start passing on one of the prep bats. Let's assume Detroit goes Langford, but let's reevaluate now. Langford's not getting past Minnesota. They big on college hitters. That would be like their wet dream. So let's say that Walker Jenkins goes here, and then Langford goes to Minnesota. Then Kyle Teal could fall. But let's say that Texas passes on Jenkins, Langford goes here, and Oakland passes on Jenkins, because I think Minnesota preferred Clark too, is what I understand. Then it's up to Cincinnati. Like, Cincinnati has to draft Walker Jenkins, or he could be a Royal here in the next 30 minutes. And like, I think Texas takes him here. Everything that we kind of understand about Texas is they preferred Jenkins, whereas Minnesota preferred Clark, and maybe even Cincinnati preferred Clark. So it's hard to tell, and I don't cover other teams nearly as much as I cover the Royals, obviously. But I think there's a world here, and I was going to say Clark or Jenkins. I still think there's a world where Walker Jenkins gets all the way to the Royals at number 8. I just don't think it's likely, but that would be my dream scenario, is the Royals walking out of here with Walker Jenkins.
If you do that, you did a phenomenal job, Kansas City Royals. And you may not have done anything. You may have just been like, okay, easy, got it.
All right. I'm making the question a little harder for Mike. Mike, let's assume that Jenkins goes.
Well, I got to get the hard one.
Let's assume that, let's assume that Langford and Jenkins are gone. The top 5 is gone, and we get to 8. Who do you hope is still there? What is your dream scenario if that's the case? If all the top 5 guys are gone and we get to 8, what's your dream scenario?
Gosh, that's so hard. My dream scenario is they're able to sign Matt Shaw for under slot and then go at 44 and 66 and get elite prep bats that are still there. I mean, some guys with super power that are going to be phenomenal. Or I'd even settle for a guy like Schoenwetter. We talked about him the other day. He's a prep arm out of, I want to say, California or Oregon, somewhere around there. And I'd even take something like that. But yeah, Matt Shaw under slot would be my thing. Now, I've heard nothing about him being open to taking under slot money or that the Royals were interested in him, but that would be my hope. That's 1A. 1B would be Tommy Troy under slot.
What if Texas were to do what they did last year and take a guy way down the board for way under slot to push their next Brock Porter all the way back to their second pick? Because for the second year in a row, because of all their free agent money, they don't have a second and third round pick. So remember, they got Brock Porter in the 4th last year because they took Kamar Rocker number 1, 3rd overall. What if they were to keep pushing somebody back by taking an undercut? If they undercut somebody really big here, and I'm scrolling Twitter, I'm waiting for it to come in so I don't hypothesize for no reason, but that would mean that both Langford and Jenkins are on the board when Minnesota gets up at number 5, which just sets up, because of Oakland, we know Oakland either wants to take like a Jacob Wilson or a Braden Taylor or a Rhett Lauder. All we need,
take Jacob Wilson.
One of them to get to Cincinnati, and both of them could be there for the Royals.
That's what I'm saying. We need 2 people to make crazy things happen.
That seems
two crazy things.
Texas and Oakland. It's Texas and Oakland.
I mean,
here.
Oakland, I could see them doing something unusual to try and get multiple picks of higher value to try and,
yours is Rhett Lauder. If the Royals take Jacob Wilson, I'm going to be furious.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to be furious as well. But Alex has a lot of guys he's going to be furious about if they take. So,
they took Langford. They did it.
Yeah, well, that's smart. Of course, they took Langford, right? And so I think I think Minnesota's almost certainly going to take Jenkins.
Dude,
right?
I don't know. I don't think that's a guarantee. I think there's a very good chance they prefer like a Jacob Gonzalez or a Braden
I like
Taylor.
Gonzalez a little bit.
That's
Gonzalez
possible.
is a guy I like a little bit, but at 8, oof.
That's possible. I wonder, the team I think that Jenkins does not get past is Cincinnati, because
That's the problem. Well,
their development system is so good.
I think Clark was their guy. So kind of like Minnesota, I think they were in on Max Clark and maybe not quite on Walker Jenkins. I think there's if Minnesota really did prefer Clark, And Cincinnati really does prefer Clark. And Oakland's going to cut an underslot deal. My very first mock draft had this exact same scenario coming up where you have an opportunity for Walker Jenkins to fall because he's not like the hyper athletic center field prospect. Walker Jenkins is probably a right fielder. Dude, this is falling perfectly for the Royals just based on the way that we understand how teams value Walker Jenkins. This could be huge if he can get to number 8.
We will see on that. I did just have a request from a follower to go ahead and just announce who's been taken so far. So far, it has been Paul Skeens at number 1, Dylan Cruz at number 2, Wyatt Langford at number 3. Or no, Max Clark at number 3 and Wyatt Langford at number 4. That is everybody who's been taken so far. On the board still, Walker Jenkins, who's one of those considered those top 5 guys. Kyle Teal is still on the board. So many others are also still on the board. Okay. We'll see. Texas has made their pick. Minnesota, you're of the mind that it could have. What do you give it a percentage chance? What is the percentage chance that Walker Jenkins makes it down to 8?
2/3, 66.7%.
You think it's 66%?
I think that is the craziest.
You giving me hope? Don't give me hope.
Every math student wants Professor Duval because this guy has no clue how math works. You think it's 66% that he makes it down to 8?
I think there's a better chance he makes it to 8 than not.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this is almost certainly a money thing as well, right? The fact that Jenkins, if Jenkins makes it to 8, it's going to be because he wants a certain amount of money that teams don't think he's actually worth. Will the Royals think he's worth that? I don't know. He is a very good player. I'll say that. He is a very good prospect. He has a ton of physicality. He is big. He is strong. He is a good athlete. He is the type of guy you're like, boy, we could turn this guy into a real major league player. But some teams don't like to go prep hitters. Some teams don't like to go prep guys at all. They prefer to play. And Alex, you and I were talking about this before with Mike before we started airing. The Royals are moving more to a model-based drafting system. And model-based drafting systems have more data on college guys. Okay, that's just how it is. Other teams often go with more college guys because they like the fact that they have more data. This sometimes drives those prep players down the draft board who some people thought talent-wise belonged higher up, right? It's going to happen again this year to a few guys. The question is it going to happen to Walker Jenkins? It'd be great if it did, but we'll see. I do want to throw out a couple of other questions for you guys. We've mentioned we've sort of been talking around draft strategy for the Royals. I'm of the mind that I would love to see them underslot given who I think is going to be available. Based on where the board is right now and our 2/3 assessment that Walker Jenkins will be there, what do you think the strategy should be when they get to pick 8? Should they just go best player on the board, or should they try and play money games to try and maximize their value in that way?
Go ahead, Mike.
God, if you'd asked me 2 days ago, I'd have said go with the best guy on the board. Because I'm always going to think you got to get a guy that can have a huge impact on a team in the top 10, right? You've got to go with somebody with some sort of a power profile because the Royals, as I've always said, will never be able to pay for that attribute on the open market. And I do prefer college bats and things like that. But I think in the last day or two, I've kind of been convinced of doing some sort of underslot thing because I don't think the guys that I want are going to be there, or I don't think the Royals are going to be willing to take them. I really want the Royals to take Matt Shaw. It's not going to happen, I don't think. And so then I go back and I look. I'm not a huge fan of Kyle Teal at 8. I can talk myself into it because the floor is so high. But yeah, I'm kind of talking myself into an underslot deal so that 46 and 66 are guys that I can really get behind and at least dream on because, and I didn't start doing that until I really looked at some of those rankings and you see, okay, like everybody from 25 to 45 is some sort of prep player and they all have something really to carry them, whether it's a power bat or whether it's an arm that looks really, really good. Alex looks disappointed and pissed off. I assume he's gone now. Jenkins is now gone.
He is.
Is he?
66%.
Don't take this guy to the freaking blackjack table.
I know,
right?
man. We're going to Vegas with Alex here. That's nuts. Okay, so
what's the opposite of Rain Man?
Straight
the
chalk
board.
for the first 5.
That's
I
the
know
thing.
it
That's what
really
it's
is.
been. It is.
It really
It
is.
has been, and
Which I thought it was
We
going to be
didn't see-
chaos. So
we didn't see that last year, right? Last year it was not that way. Last year we saw Texas throwing a big curveball in there. Last year we saw a whole bunch of different crazier things happening. But this year, among public evaluators, among people who are in the know, there was a consensus top 5 players, and all 5 of them have gone off the board in the top 5 picks here. And so now is when things get a little more chaotic in my mind, because Oakland has got a lot of options, and Oakland is a team that wants to save money typically. And, we'll see what goes on from here. But so far through these first 5 picks, it has been exactly like most of us thought it would be with these top 5. We've talked a little bit about dream scenarios for the Royals now. Alex's is now shot because he wanted Walker Jenkins to continue to fall. That's okay. You can still get to Kyle Teal, which I know you want in your heart's of hearts. But let's talk nightmare scenarios. we're not balanced if we're not talking about our nightmares.
you're not a Royals fan if you're not talking
Royals fan,
nightmares
if
too.
you're not talking nightmares. What is our nightmare scenario at this point at 8? Everybody, let's do some therapy here.
Jacob Wilson, I would just be in shambles. If it's Jacob Shambles or Rhett Lauder, I may just walk away. I got nothing else to talk about.
You're going to want to rant. You're going to want a vehicle for letting some expletives fly. I think
You
this
can
is
see
it
the
for you.
Freudian slip because he just called him Jacob Shambles. Okay. Or I've had too much to drink. I think he just called him Jacob Shambles, which is what he is. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure he's a good human being, but he's a hit tool. That's all he is.
He's a hit tool from Grand Canyon.
He's
and
Madrigal.
so
If he develops, he's Madrigal.
if
Like
if he develops, he can be a fringe major leaguer.
like I have no idea. MLB Pipeline has him like 10th or something insane.
That's because Pipeline still rolls out a lot of old school, old head thinking about what
I
makes a Major League
guess.
Baseball player viable. So you'll see dudes who are like, well, this guy's a safe floor guy. They'll rate quad A players pretty high on their board, And so, I'm not listening to that noise with a guy like Jacob Wilson. I have no interest in him. Somebody's rocking a very just disgusting mustache on TV
It's
right
Paul
now.
Skeens.
That's Skeens. That
Mhm.
mustache looks awful. Real bad. But anyway,
You're saying this? You.
yeah, this is Tom Selleck calls me about it every day. Yeah.
Look at the people in the background just standing there
Dude.
like they're his bodyguards.
I saw a bunch of those guys marching through campus at Charlottesville a few years ago. So yeah, that looks very similar. I recognize that polo anywhere. Oh, it's
Deep
getting dark
cut.
over here. It's getting
That's
dark. Anyway, Mike, what's your nightmare scenario? You said Alex
Well,
Jacob Wilson. What's your?
He stole mine, which
Okay.
was Jacob Wilson. My other one would be Namala. I understand why people like him. I really do. I don't see it as much. I don't see it. He's got approach issues. He's swing and miss issues as a high schooler. That screams Bubba Starling to me. That screams, guy. I know Bobby Witt Jr. had some swing and miss issues in high school as well. I just don't. I don't see it from Namala. I don't see him developing the power. That's not my. I would stay away from him. Now, if by some, this is never going to happen, but if you fall to 44, if you're taking him at later in the round, I think, or later in the draft, I think there's value to that, but I wouldn't touch him at 8, even for under slot. I wouldn't touch him.
I'm going to go with either Rhett Lauder or Noble Meyer at full slot at 8. That would be my nightmare scenario, right? If they manage to get Noble Meyer for, I'd want it to be like $1 million, but they're never going to get him for $1 million less than slot. But if I could live with something like 800, 700 grand less than slot for him, and same for Rhett Lauder. Neither one of them is taking that though. And so if they try and do something like that, I'm going to be real disappointed. I'm just not, I'm not a fan of the drafting of pitchers that high, especially prep pitchers, especially prep right-handed pitchers. And so I'm just not there. I think their pitching development has got a lot better. And I think that is actually a reason to take pitchers later in the draft. Yeah, not higher in the draft. And so you'll find gems in 3 through 20 that they can turn into viable major league starters and relievers. No reason on earth to get crazy and start just randomly taking Rhett Lauder wouldn't even be the guy I'd want of the college pitchers, right? And so, give me Hurston Waldrop if you're going to go college pitcher.
Oh, give me Dolander before him all day.
Nah,
I'm not as big fan of Waldrop, but I
love a
still
split
believe
finger,
in
man.
Dollander. I do.
I love a split finger.
Yeah.
So we'll see on this one. Oakland's selection is in, and we'll get a little clarity. Oh! If you're an Oakland fan, you had
Who'd
enough
they
to be
take?
pissed about already. Jacob Wilson.
Oh my God! Thank you, Oakland.
Thank you, Oakland. Thank you. Now I just need Cincinnati to take Kyle Teal off the board, and I'll be fine.
Oh
You don't
man.
like that pick?
Here. Woo.
Yeah. What, you don't like that pick, Alex?
Smells like somebody just drafted Christian Cologne. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good. That's a good.
It's a good cop right there.
Except that you have 0% chance of Jacob Wilson ever getting a hit in the World Series.
That's true. Yeah, because he plays for the A's. Yeah, my bad.
Hey, that team has rebuilt and deconstructed itself 100 times. They'll be back eventually.
If they
but-
move to the Las Vegas, I hope they call themselves the Las Vegas Craps.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. You have to imagine, and I don't know what you all think, but I have to imagine that the only reason Wilson is the selection here is he agreed to take so much under slot, right? Like so much less money than his slot value. And they're going to try and take some prep guys with their next picks, because other than that, what is the reason for doing this?
It's a little like McDonald's and Capitol Grill. Like we would all love to eat at Capitol Grill all the time. Sometimes you got McDonald's money, and he is the McDouble of the draft. It's like, yes, you can physically eat it, but it's cheap, and that's why we eat it. It's not because it's the Wagyu steak burger at Capitol Grill. You know what I mean?
right. But
I am too poor to eat there at Capitol
Yeah,
Grill, so I'm not entirely sure what that is even.
Well,
same.
it's a joke because Arby's was it Arby's? No.
Oh yeah,
Jack
Arby's
in
did
the
a
Box.
Wagyu.
Jack in the
Oh,
Box
did they?
is it Jack in the Box? Somebody like some fast food joint has like their Wagyu burger. It was a joke, Mike.
Sorry, dude, I don't get it. I'm poor.
he's like, I couldn't tell.
Yeah. Are
Anyway,
you sure it was a joke?
Are you sure? What I love about, or what I find so, but you kind of got to also say, well, Oakland is stuck here to some degree, right? Like they have to think that nobody is worth full slot at 6, right? Or they might have given it to that guy, right? And I don't totally disagree with them. Like who is left after you've moved past those first 5, who you're like, this guy is worth full slot at 6 because everybody behind him is worse, right? That's just not the case. Like this second tier, you're going to see a lot of money games played because it is so deep. I don't think Jacob Wilson belongs at the top of that second tier. I think
that's
guys
what
like
I'm
Matt
saying.
Shaw, that's true. I think guys like Matt Shaw belong at the top of that tier, and a few other guys, but apparently they really liked Jacob Wilson, or he was willing to take a lot less money than everybody else.
It's the second thing.
Yeah. Right. Then that's, I mean, I wish people wouldn't put down that strategy as much.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
Okay. Joel says and that he just happens to be at the top of my feed. He says Rhett Lauder is going to Cincy.
does he have inside dope or something?
I don't know.
Joel
Maybe he's just
Penfield?
wishing. Maybe that's Joel's
My friend?
wish.
Oh man. Damn it.
So that leaves. So Kyle Teal's on the board.
Kyle
and
Teal
I'm kinda
is
hitch-
the Royals
kinda
are
hitched
about to
my
pick.
wagon to the idea that the Royals wouldn't pass on him. So here we
We
go.
might get to see Alex be made a fool of in real time.
I
here.
don't see the Rhett Lauder thing anywhere else. I kind of wonder how Joel knows.
Yeah,
this. Joel,
that's
how do you
my
know this?
yeah. Let's double check.
Preston-
Not that
Oh,
would it-
never mind. Preston said the same thing.
Preston's just said
Okay.
it.
So apparently it's a thing. I just don't know. Are we that far behind? So there's
I don't
Kyle
think we
Teal.
are.
I'm sure I could be.
Guess I have some gusto riding on the fact that I said they wouldn't pass on him. So
Yeah. Well, let's see.
I believe it. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm not the hugest Kyle Teal fan, but I do, the floor is good enough for me to get behind and the approach is good enough. So, that would be cool. I wouldn't be extremely pissed if it's Kyle Teal. Not Jacob Wilson pissed or, Namala pissed, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that I wouldn't be pissed at Namala because I think he's got a high ceiling, and I think that they could, they could turn him into something great, and he would save a bunch of money because they're never going to have to pay him full slot at 8. But man, I'm so worried they're going to take Kyle T here, and it's not even like you ever get like overly anxious about something that you really shouldn't be that anxious about, because that's where I'm at right now, because I'm like, man, I know Teal is a fine baseball player, but I don't think he is the best option here, right? I don't think he's better than Matt Shaw as a prospect. I don't think the prospect of getting someone else and a lot less money spent is a bad one for the Royals. If they take Teal, I worry that that's going to hamper their ability to take some guys at 44 and 66 who I would really want. We will see. If you haven't heard us talk about Kyle Teal, he is a catcher from the University of Virginia. He is a left-handed hitter. He gets pretty good grades defensively, especially as a catch and throw guy. Some questions about his framing, but that may not matter because they're going to go to automated balls and strikes before he gets to the major leagues. Not the biggest guy, doesn't have a ton of power profile as an offensive player, but has done good things in the past, especially last year. Really put up an OPS over 1, I think. Had roughly the same number of walks and strikeouts. And so, we will see what the Royals end up doing. It is Rhett Lauder on my television now.
I'll tell you, Kyle Teal would be one of the most like Jason Kendall level of athleticism behind the plate. He's a very athletic dude back there. Nothing like Salvador Perez. Salvador Perez, don't get me wrong, is a good athlete, but Kyle Teal is better than him even. He can move. He's quick, really quick back there.
Well, let me ask you guys this, because, we're talking about, is the pick going to be Teal? Is it not? What would Teal have to do offensively at the major league level to make it worth it for you two?
He's got to walk a lot because I don't think he's ever going to develop the power. So he's got to be able to get on base.
Give me a slash line. What does he got to do offensively to be worth it?
Well, he's still a catcher. I mean,
right.
270 with an OBP that's like 340, 350, and then he's got a slug over 425 probably.
Let me see if I can find somebody that's in the realm of like what I think he is, and then I'll answer that question a little better. Let's say he is Hae-Sung Kim, 255, 347, 410, a 155 ISO, 12% walk, 23% strikeout, a 112 weighted runs created plus. Just
112.
Just a little bit above league average, hit some home runs, hit a bunch of doubles.
And then you're okay getting that at 8.
Yeah, because I think he's going to be a really good catcher. And I think he hits more like 280, gets on base at that 350 clip, slug 420, 430, and then you've got a 140 ISO, you've got a 350 on base, you've got a 110, 115 weighted runs created plus, and then
so a guy who's consistently in the all-star conversation. He may not be it every year, but yeah.
Well, let's look at so William Contreras in Milwaukee right now, 111 weighted runs created plus. He's an elite defender, 2.3 wins at the halfway mark. That's a 5-win player. JT Realmuto this year, 102. So he's a league average hitter. He's been a very average defender. He's going to be worth a couple of wins. I mean, I think that's your floor, is like a 2-win player. And it's a little bit like Enrique Bradfield Jr. at a different position and for a different reason. The floor is just a very valuable player, assuming things develop on a normal regiment, right? And then the upside is like, I know Jason Kendall's the one being thrown around. I would say I don't really know what a good comp for him is, because I don't know that he hits like a lot of other catchers.
Yeah. That's the hard part for him, is that like the lack of power and the way he hits is very different than other catchers. I mean, you don't see guys kind of as small. I want to say as small as him. Like in terms of his body and like the way he moves, I want to say Buster Posey, but he's not going to hit like Buster Posey. And
he's
so
not nearly as big.
Well, he's certainly not as strong as Buster Posey.
Yeah.
And so you got to say like, well, I don't know who to comp him to, honestly, and you hope his defense is superior. The thing that I think you're talking about Enrique Bradfield Jr. there, and I think that's a great idea to talk about their floors in similar ways, because they're both premium defensive positions. And I would be okay with Kyle Teal if he were willing to take Enrique Bradfield Jr. money, right? Like, the thing is, they're going to have to pay him full slot at 8. And what are you paying?
Oh my God, they're taking Blake Mitchell.
No.
Now, this is unconfirmed, but
unconfirmed. Hold on. Uh-oh. I'm seeing it from Joe Doyle. Oh my Lord. Alex, I know you're not happy with that. I'm not either.
Maybe. Hey, let's ask this though: were they able to get him way under?
Well, they had to have, right? Like, there's no way you pay
They have
Blake
to.
Mitchell full slot at 8. That seems crazy, right? And so this pick will have to be judged against other picks that they make later on. Now, Blake Mitchell, I mean, we can talk about him. He is a big left-handed hitter, I believe, out of Texas. Right now, they call him a catcher. I don't think he's going to stay catching. We shall see. I'm trying to work the phone here. If you watch video of him hit, he does have significant power. He is a guy who is still somewhat raw as a hitter, but the tools are there to be a significant power hitter. I think he's a corner outfielder moving forward. Alex looks like he's going to throw his phone through his laptop. But we're about to see. The pick is now coming over our screens, or my screen anyway.
It's Mitchell.
It's Mitchell. Mike, what are your thoughts on Blake Mitchell, catcher out of Sinton High School, Texas, to the Royals?
You know, I like the power potential. I like from what I've heard, the approach, although it's so hard to judge a high school hitter's approach from, all-star circuits and stuff like that. It's not great. Let me put it that way. I like the fact that he is a somewhat good athlete. I don't think he's a catcher either. I think you got Wyatt Langford, or not Wyatt Langford. You got Jenkins light. That's what you got at 8.
No, here's the thing. Mitchell's not the athlete that Jenkins is, right?
Yeah,
Not
he
even
probably
close,
isn't.
right? And so that
That's
really
fair.
limits what he can do. Like, yeah, he might be able to move to right field, but he's not going to be a good right fielder. Watch him run out of the box in these clips, and it looks lumbery. It looks slow. He is a pitcher as well. I doubt they're gonna give him any run as a pitcher. So they're showing him doing both. But you see a good swing there. You obviously see a good swing. You see power potential. You see, a guy who can really hit the baseball a little bit. But man, this is not a pick that I would think of. Alex, we still haven't heard from you. So when you feel like you can,
when you're in a safe place,
when you're in a place where you want to offer thoughts on Blake Mitchell, you let me know.
I just need to know what they're going to do later. And I mean, the problem that we talked about this morning, Marcus, is that there's so much distance between their picks that it's, I mean, let me start with Blake Mitchell. I had him number 16 on my board for a reason. I think he's a good prospect, but I had a couple pitchers in front of him, Colin Houck, some college bats. Like, there were better options for what you're trying to do, in my opinion. Now, what they're trying to do, I would hope if they give Blake Mitchell full slot. If we find out later tonight they give him full slot, I mean, good God,
I might have to come back on here just myself and just start every expletive you've ever heard.
The thing is, it's like there's so much distance. The Rays, the Marlins, the Twins. I think there's a fourth or a fifth team even that pick twice before you get to pick your second time, which means there are going to be teams who try to do the exact same thing you just did with all the players you wanted to do it with. We know they like – I say that. I thought they really like Kyle Teal. So I've heard that like a Brandon Winokur, a Ty Pete, a Dylan Head, a Charlie Soto. But how many of these guys do you think are realistically going to be available by the time you pick again? And it's like, I don't know, man. I don't think this was the year to play the game. I really don't think it was the year. And if you were going to do it, the safest way to do it is to take the really good college hitter. Yeah. And even if it's not Teal, it's Shaw, it's Troy, it's Braden Taylor, who I would have been okay with there under slot. If you would have, they basically just drafted college Braden Taylor that you got to wait on a few extra years. And it's like, I just feel like there's maybe some process missing. I know earlier we talked about how hopefully they're leaning on their model a little bit. I think that's an anti-model pick. That is like what can we get for a certain number and a guy that we scout that we like. I don't think a model would actually tell you to take a prep catcher because prep catchers fail at a rate that might be worse than prep right-handed pitchers. I haven't seen that data in a long time, since like 2018. So maybe that's gotten better. Prep catchers fail a ton, just like prep right-handed pitchers. It just feels like with the state of their farm system, you couldn't afford to take a guy who could become like a Gavin Cross, who has some serious strikeout issues despite the tools and the power, who could become like a Carter Jensen, who's having a really hard time getting base hits to fall because it's a very power pull happy oriented approach. If he's either of those things, you really just shot yourself in the foot because you had so many safer options. Now, Blake Mitchell could go on a freaking run and become a top 100 prospect by next year. And we're all looking back, go, haha, remember when we were worried about that? Of course, it's in the realm of possibilities, but your system can't absorb the miss. You don't have the depth right now to absorb it, which is why I thought they had to go Tommy Troy, Matt Shaw, etc. And I mean, to pass on an Arjun Namala here, we've got to be talking about big savings. Like, we better be talking about a $4 million sign so that they have $2 million for later on. Sorry.
Yeah, the thing that I would want to know the most about this, and I don't even know if they have numbers on that. I got to know bat speed from him. Like, what are we talking about as far as his ability to get to elite level pitching? So, when you go to those showcase things, I got to know that he's doing the best against the best competition to even think about taking a guy like this in the top 15. Like, that's the thing for me. Like, they better be damn certain he's not going to go into rookie ball and be overmatched by guys who were pitching in college. Now I will say this, he was an LSU commit. So, he was going to go play at the highest level of baseball. They thought he was good enough, but yeah, it's scary. It's more scary than anything else. Yes, there's stuff to dream on with Blake Mitchell. I think his power potential is higher than a Braden Taylor. I think, if everything works out, you have a guy that hits in the middle of your lineup, but everything has to work out. And how often does that happen? Yikes.
Well, that's the thing. You're talking about a very narrow path to
A
his
10%
best possible
outcome here.
Right. Yeah.
You're
You're
looking at a
talking about a
10%
very narrow band to his best possible outcome. And that's because right now he's being valued as if he's going to stay at catcher. And even if you look at what his game and you say, hey, he's got the game to stay at catcher. Even if you think that, the odds of him staying at catcher are not good. Okay. Like, the odds of him ever just sort of going all the way through as a catcher are not great. Right now, he might be a good catcher, but the odds still aren't great. Right. Because there are just a lot of those prospects. Okay. And so if he can't stay at catcher, what are his options? Right. Well, now he's got to hit enough to play first base or right field if he can run enough to stay there. Or now he's got to learn to play third, maybe be an average third baseman. Real tough, right? Like, it's not real clear to me. Says Joel wants to hop on. Okay. We'll send Joel a link. But Alex, take over for my rant, telling the people that I just wanted to agree with your notion that, like, yes, absolutely, yes, it was a safer pick to do something like take EBJ or Matt Shaw or Braden Taylor or, someone else who is going to give you a little bit more certainty in terms of their development.
Let's do this. I got a question for you. How many more other prep bats did you like better than him?
Good question. That were left?
Yeah. I mean, obviously Clark and Jenkins are
on
off.
my board. 1, 2. But the biggest issue I have is there are other bets. I would have rather had Ty Pete for less money. I would have rather had why am I drawing a ball? I would have rather had Dylan Head for less money. Like, if you're talking about just across the board for the same amount of money, I would have rather had Arjun Namala. I'd have rather had
Houck.
Colin Houck. Thank you.
Oh, I love Colin Houck.
But
would have definitely rather had him.
if you're saving some money, okay, but I would almost rather have guys down the line for even less money than this pick. It feels like to me you're getting a bad combination of talent and money. Now, we'll see. I have no idea how much he's going to ask for. It just doesn't feel like a pick that's going to be super cheap and affordable like a Frank Mazzucato was. Frank Mazzucato signed for like half of his slot. if Blake Mitchell's signing for that, I'll feel better about it. It just doesn't feel like that. We didn't hear a lot about that. Even my daughter's crying. She doesn't even like the pick.
She hates it. She hates it.
She knows it's a bad pick. Well, here's the thing. I mean, yes, we do need the context of who they take later, but I think what we're feeling is there were better underslot options, right? Like
Yes.
Kyle Teal was the best full slot option, probably. Actually, I would have preferred someone like Matt Shaw, but if he was going to take full slot, he was an option at full slot. I think all of us feel like there were probably 5 or 6 better under slot options we'd rather have. I just invited Joel Penfield of One Royal Way on. Hopefully he'll hop on here in a second to talk a little bit about how he feels about this pick. But we will need to see how much money was saved. We will need to see who those next picks are, whether or not those tier 2 prep guys last until 44-66. And then one other thing we'll need to see is, and I'll need to see is, when he gets into pro ball, does it look like he can stay at catcher? Let's think of dream scenario here for him. He can stay at catcher. He can be a league average catcher or maybe above, right? And he can still hit with his 55 hit tool, his 55 power. That's that might be a 10% outcome of possibility, but if it happens, the Royals hit a home run with this pick. The question is, what happened? Joel, welcome on Royals Weekly. Alex is ranting, but we'll have you chime in here in a second. Alex, you want to finish that thought real quick?
Yeah, what they better do is build a damn small stadium downtown Kansas City. You better start building something that these left-handed hitters can get the ball over, because if you draft another MJ Melendez, it's not going to matter in Kauffman Stadium. You better build the next Yankee Stadium so that we look back and go, oh, they drafted the next Brian McCann in his run of hitting 20 home runs in 1, almost 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 seasons in a row. Like, that better be what
that
you're
would be
getting.
fantastic.
Fantastic, but I don't think he's the defender, which was a big part of Brian McCann's game. I don't think he's going to hit. I don't understand the process. Like, everything that we know about evaluating the draft on a model, and you take a prep catcher. Now, I've said before, I'll say it one more time before Joel gets in here. If they move him to right field immediately, I'll back off. And like, okay, so you drafted an outfielder that you really like the bat. Okay. He doesn't look like that. Marcus, you mentioned he does not look like a good runner. He is not a good athlete.
He cannot run.
This
feels
like
line has it as a 35 grade runner.
Yeah, that's about
Carter
right.
Jensen? Are they out on Carter Jensen? Do they just not think that pick's going to work anymore? It's been 2 years.
And there's still some really good numbers on Carter Jensen. Like, it's not like he looks like a huge failure. He's doing some things really well.
Joel, we got to get your thoughts in here. What do you think about this pick, Blake Mitchell at 8? So far, it's a little despondent in here.
I'm whelmed, I think.
That's great.
Like,
a little louder for the rest of our crew here.
Sorry, I'll have my mic up here. I don't know how to get down there.
All right.
Yeah, I'm whelmed, I think. Like, I'm not upset. It could have been a hell of a lot worse, I guess. Like, they could have taken Noble Meyer. And that's not a knock on the kid, just prep varieties that concern the crap out of me. But there were so many other guys that were available. Not even Kyle Teal, like Arjun Namala, Chase Dolander, if they wanted to go the pitcher route. There were other guys. Like, the board fell pretty nicely, given that the A's went under slot like we all knew they would. It was just a matter of who was going to be there. Felt like the Royals would probably take an under slot guy. But prep catchers, it's the same thing with prep righties. Like, it's a mixed bag and the hit rate's really low. So you better hope that you're able to outdevelop your scouting here. And the jury's kind of out on that right now. So I guess we'll see. I try not to get too over the top upset about MLB picks, because it's not like they're going to come in and impact the big leagues right away. For the most part, like, we're still years away from seeing some of this develop for pretty much every team. So it ends up being a crapshoot. So I guess we'll see. I've been wrong before. I remember sitting on a Zoom thing with Alex when the Royals picked Frank Mazzucato when we were despondent and confused. And, he's turned out to be a decent ball player at this point. So who knows?
Yeah, and keep that open-mindedness, because it will require a lot of, like, what are we going to see from him when he gets into professional baseball.
Yeah, I mean,
The
that's
thing
a
I'm
lot of
paying
it.
attention to is what does he look like behind the plate? That is going to be the thing that I think really gets his value to where you say, okay, that was a decent pick at 8, or sinks his value completely. Because I don't know that anybody I've read has said, oh, the bat is good enough to play at a corner outfield. The bat is good enough to play at third or anything like that. He's a pretty big kid, but he's not like, you know, he's not enormous. He's not Aaron Judge. He's not Giancarlo Stanton in terms of power profile. And so you're looking at a kid like, okay, he can maybe a future 60 grade in the power department, but is he going to hit enough to play first base if he has to move there? I don't know. Is he going to hit enough to play right field? I don't know. Right?
Yeah. So here's kind of, let's do a little thought experiment here. We took Blake Mitchell. If Blake Mitchell doesn't play catcher in professional baseball and he's a right fielder or a first baseman or whatever, what if they'd have taken Chase Davis? Would you have been more happy with Chase Davis? He can only hope to be Chase Davis in 3 years, like that's my thing. If they don't think he's a catcher, then this pick makes next to no sense to me.
Yeah.
Because
I don't know.
he's not better than Chase Davis. He's not better than Colton Ledbetter. He's not, like that's the thing that gets me with it, is like he almost has to stay at catcher to provide enough value moving forward.
The Angels just drafted another big leaguer next year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're going to bring him
here's the
right
thing.
up. Who is?
I
see who it
knew
was.
somebody. I knew somebody would do this. They would take Nolan Schanuel. That was who was just taken by the Los Angeles Angels, first baseman out of Florida Atlantic.
Oh, see, I like him.
I know you liked him. I knew somebody would be like, let's get Schanuel. We'll save a bunch of money. And he's a dude who's as certain as anybody to hit in the major leagues. Right.
He's another
And so
guy.
they're like, I'll take
Compare
Schanuel. He would have
him.
been better.
Compare him. So like
Right.
Nolan Schanuel, he's a fringy first baseman, possible attempt to move to right field, but no guarantees there. He can run a little. A lot of people think he has good raw power, though his power numbers have been good, not great in college. Struggled on the Cape, gets taken there. Again, Blake Mitchell, if he doesn't play catcher, can only hope to be where Nolan Schanuel is in like 3 years. So that's interesting. Interesting choice, Royals. Interesting choices.
Now you did mention that. What's his name? I'm already forgetting our dude's name. Okay, Blake Mitchell. You did mention that Blake Mitchell is
Tells
an
you a lot,
LSU
right?
commit. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's so many names in this brain right now. Like, I'm going to start mixing them up with my former students soon. Blake Mitchell, LSU commit. They are a school that knows how to identify talent, and so if that makes you feel any better, maybe that makes some of us feel a little bit better. I want us to do grades. I know that it's hard to do without getting to see how much money is being spent, without getting to see who those next 2 picks are. But we'll call it a ghost grade if you guys know what that is. What is your ghost grade for this first pick? We'll start with Joel on the outside there.
C-. And I'm probably being generous, but then again, like I said, the MLB draft is such a crapshoot. Who knows? He may come out and we may all look like morons in a year. I don't know. I feel like they could have drafted Kyle Teal or Arjun Namala or Noble Meyer. I'd still probably give it a C because who knows?
Wow, you're a harsh grader, Mike.
I'm going harsher, man. I'm going to go with a D just because I don't think he stays at catcher, and his path to big league success is so threading a needle. If he doesn't play catcher and doesn't play catcher well, then I think he's got a lot to do to show he can be a really good offensive player at Major League Baseball level when you could have gone with other guys who have shown a lot more.
Now, here's the thing nobody's saying. Nobody's saying the name MJ Melendez right now. And it's one of those names that you would think might get brought up in this conversation a little bit because he was a prep catcher that the Royals took. They took him in the second round, not in the first. But when he was taken, I remember the conversation being, boy, it's tough out there for prep catchers, And
he was glove first.
And people
was
were like,
glove
he's
over
a glove
bat.
first guy. I heard people just staunchly say, this guy could catch in Major League Baseball right now. And they were absolutely wrong, right? And so it's one of those things. Now we see him move to the outfield. He is much more athletic than Blake Mitchell, right? He is not I wouldn't call Melendez a 35 runner. In my mind, he's probably a 50 runner, maybe a little bit better. But The question is like, and we see what offense Melendez will need to produce to be a successful major leaguer in right field. Just my thoughts. Alex, what grade do you want to put on this pick right now? Ghost grade.
I'm going to give it a B minus. But it has to, I have to wait. I'm giving them some grace as
You are
it
such a
relates
great
to
teacher.
their next two picks. As it relates to their next two picks, let's just see what happens. If we find out in the next hour before pick 40, because they're doing 44 and 66 tonight, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're
Are we
gonna
gonna
be here
are we
for
gonna come
those.
back and do this live?
Oh yes. We're
Okay.
coming back to do it live for 44 and 66.
Okay, so let's say in about an hour we find out they're gonna give him $5.5 million. I'm not coming back on the show. It's just chalk it up as an F. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm done. If we find out that they're only going to give him $3.5-4 million, like okay, let's just see what happens. Because if the draw is somehow they get Thomas White or Ty Pete,
I like Thomas White.
okay, I'll back off. I'll bow to the crown a little bit.
Same here. I'll
and then
I'll
they go
change
get
my grade
Alex-
if they get those two players.
Right. And then if they go get Alex Mooney at 66, draft eligible sophomore, okay. But knowing the Royals, what they'll probably do is take like Jack Hurley, who they could have gotten along with Kyle Teal or anybody else. I do think it's interesting, by the way, Kyle Teal has not been drafted yet. So, I mean, let's see what happens. Maybe Teal's not very good. Who knows? I'm trying to sell myself on like something here.
I
And
think
of course the Diamondbacks go with Tommy Troy. I just want to be an Arizona fan. I want Derek Ladnier back so bad.
And here's my thing on Teal. Like, I think what ended up happening is teams started asking some of the questions that I've been asking, which is like, yeah, he might be able to defend at a major league level when he gets there. Will he ever be able to hit at a major league level? I think there are questions about that. And then, and his demands for full slot money. I mean, it was public that he wanted full slot, and a lot of teams want to play money games, it looks like, in this first round. And so,
Joel, who were you
thoughts on
looking?
this?
Joel, who were you looking for at 8? Who was your guy that you wanted?
Kyle Teal was kind of the consensus thing, and I was like, okay, that's fine. Arjun Namala was a dude that I really like because I think there's a ton to dream on. He's not even 18 years old yet. He had a little bit of a runway, a pretty good athlete, some power for a wiry frame. Like, I think there was a lot to like in a pretty raw prospect, but with him not even being 18 years old yet, I was like, okay, I think that could be good. Okay. Now it was basically anybody but Noble Meyer. And then they took Blake Mitchell, who, I didn't want Noble Meyer. It's nothing against the kid. It's just prep righties. Like, it's just a ticking time bomb. I can't do it. Yeah. If the Royals were the Rays with pitching development, okay, sure, take Noble Meyer in a heartbeat, and I'm not worried about it. But they just haven't proved enough yet for me to believe that they can take a kid like that and he's going to succeed. I just don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna read a comment from our live chat, and that I hope is going to make Alex feel better. It says, Alex, you are normally the smartest person on Royals Twitter, barely over Preston. Sorry, Preston, if you're paying attention to this at all. Over me and I'm not gonna read that because
what does that mean?
Really, I don't know.
Hey, the Cubs are taking Matt Shaw.
He's going to play great in Wrigley. That guy is going to kill Wrigley Field.
Here's the last line of this one. Definitely the smartest one in this call. But then he says, but a B is stupid. Or B minus, I think is what he meant. B minus, yes. But a B minus is stupid. That's from Lucas Dame. I don't know who that is. Thank you so much, Lucas, for watching. Any final thoughts here on the first pick, 8th overall? We'll come back for 44th and talk a little bit about it. Any thoughts before we chime out?
I do. I want to be really clear that, like I said, I had Mitchell 16th on my board for a reason. He has a chance to be like a Kyle Schwarber, and that's kind of what we said about Carter Jensen too. Like, it's in there. There is an outcome where Blake Mitchell is really good, and I don't want to take that away from him or the Royals. Like, it's in the realm of possibility. It's not like they drafted Jacob Wilson where there's no shot at upside, right? There's no shot Jacob Wilson is ever an all-star. I mean, he's like Nick Madrigal, Nicky Lopez, and you pray he's an everyday version of that. There's a shot that Blake Mitchell has that in him. It's just when you are evaluating the draft, the numbers don't lie. Prep right-handed pitchers, prep catchers don't work. Hardly ever. They don't ever work. And so it's like, if you're going to gamble on that demographic, you damn well better be able to back it up. And the Royals haven't earned that. They have not earned the right to gamble and pray. They don't have the depth for it. They don't have the farm system. They sure as hell don't have the big league roster to absorb what could happen if Blake Mitchell doesn't work out. And Blake Mitchell's not a good athlete. Dan Zielinski just tagged me on Twitter and said, he could always move to the outfield. No, you can't just always move to the outfield.
No.
MJ Melendez just moved to the outfield. He's horrible. And he's fine. He's whatever, but he's not a good outfielder. Sure, I could go play out there, but you can't just move anybody. Kyle Schwarber is awful. Kyle Schwarber is going to be one of Major League's best hitters this year and worth like 2 wins because he can't do anything right in the outfield. Like, you're talking about a first base DH prospect if he's not a catcher. And like Mike said, so much this is hinged on him being a good catcher. Does he have a good pop time? Yeah. You should read. I'm not going to read it out loud. It'd make me vomit. But Fangraphs, Eric Longenhagen's write-up on Blake Mitchell defensively is putrid. It's awful. I know some people think he's pretty good, including Kylie McDaniel and Ben Badler at Baseball America. But one of the more negative guys I follow, and Eric Longenhagen, thinks he's awful. And I'm just, how can you take that pick? How is that your guy when you have maybe a bottom 10 farm system in baseball and one of the 5 or 6 worst teams in the history of Major League Baseball? You cannot afford for this to miss. And again, I'm not saying it won't work. I'm just, the odds are so stacked against you that it is irresponsible to try.
It's you need to roll snake eyes, right? You need something that long, right? That's the odds of what's going on here. Mike,
You know what I'm going to equate it to real quick, because it just popped into my head. It's drafting a first-round running back in the NFL is what it is.
Right.
It's
That's what
not
it
that
is.
it's always a terrible decision. Yes, you can get Saquon Barkley sometimes, but sometimes you get Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or sometimes it just doesn't always. The risk is too high for the reward. The juice is not worth the squeeze. Especially for, like you said, for a team that is in disarray at all levels. And I think that's what makes us feel so desperate about it. Is like, hey, we've won 26 games or whatever. Like, we need a single. We don't need a home run. The small chance of getting a home run. We need a fucking base hit, and bad.
Can I read this tweet from Max Reaper real quick? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
sure.
I want to.
Max Reaper, Royals Review.
Yes. From 2010 to 2019, there were 14 high school catchers drafted in the first round. Only 5 made the big leagues. There were 14 college catchers drafted in the first round, ironically. 12 reached the big leagues. You are more than double the likelihood of getting a big league asset, of hitting the single, the double, like Mike said, in a Kyle Teal or something like that, in a safer profile than you are in the prep catcher. I brought some of the math, some of the data to the table. Thank you, Max, by the way, for bringing that for me. But I just wanted to give some context as to what I was saying.
Thank you so much for that, Alex. Max Reaper, Royals Review. Thank you so much to Joel Penfield for jumping in and joining us of
Thank
One
you-
Royal
thank you
Way.
for
Really
letting me
appreciate
crash.
that. Yeah, no, I'm so glad you did. It was great to hear your thoughts on that. We will be back with pick 44, maybe a couple picks early, and give you some analysis on what the Royals choose to do there. A lot of this Blake Mitchell pick is going to depend on pick 44 at 66, and we'll know a lot more here in about an hour and a half. Thank you so much for joining us so far. Meet us right back here for
Alex.
pick 44. It's time to start drinking, everybody.
Oh, I'm already way ahead of you on that one.